Jackson, the sister of Michael Jackson. She's also a member of the Jackson 5. Now let's turn you over to the ring announcer, Chuck Howell. They have pomp and pageantry in very typical Don King fashion to precede the actual fight itself. I'd like to mention, ladies and gentlemen, that this satellite feed is coming to us without ringside commentary. I regret that you will have to settle for my commentary because both Channel 1 and 2 of the satellite beam is without ringside commentary. I assure you that. And right now we're focusing on some illustrious personalities at ringside. And there is a wide shot showing the ballroom of the Las Vegas Hilton. It is an indoor venue this time, in contrast to the last fight held here between Mike Tyson and Pinkman Thomas, which was an improvised stadium on the parking lot itself of this, the largest hotel in the entire world. As you can see, there seems to be a sellout crowd here. More personalities and celebrities being focused by the cameras of Don King Productions. This, incidentally, is being beamed to U.S. homes only through home box office. You cannot watch this on public television. Neither can you catch it in any closed-circuit television theater. There is, in Las Vegas, a complete blockout of the fight. Top seats for this fight sold for $700. Minimum seat here is $50. Incidentally, ladies and gentlemen, some late-breaking developments in a rules meeting attended to by representatives of all three world boxing organizations, namely the WBA, the WBC, and the IBF. They all agreed that the fight will be fought over 12 rounds instead of the originally scheduled 15 rounds. That's right, this is in conformity with the World Boxing Council. Apparently, the two other boxing bodies decided to defer to the WBC in this particular instance anyway. But the rules will be more or less the same as in other World Championship contests. The 3 knockdown rule has been waived, which means that the fight will not be stopped automatically after 3 knockdowns. The referee, or rather the fighter, no fighter may be saved by the bell except in the final round. In other words, if a knockdown should occur at the close of the round, the referee will give the fallen fighter the count. If he fails to arise at the count of 10, then it is automatically ruled a knockout victory for the guy who inflicted the knockout. Here is Iron Mike Tyson coming out of his locker room in typical fashion in his gladiatorial splendor. You notice how he is practically naked to the bone. He is wearing only a pair of shorts, boxing pants, and shoes with no socks. This is a drastic departure from the usual flamboyance displayed by heavyweight champions, especially guys like Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes, who love to come into the ring dressed to the teeth, you know, in the glittering Liberace-like robes, puzzles on their shoes, and so many other things and trinkets in their pants. But this guy, he comes to the ring with nothing on but his birthday clothes, a pair of shorts, and just his fighting shoes. I think this is more intended to be a psychological ploy to intimidate the opponent right away with his extremely intimidating physique. And there is a fanfare atop the ring. You know, this reminds you so much of the splendor of the 1984 opening of the Los Angeles Olympics. Iron Mike Tyson, in typical fashion, is already worked up to a big sweat. Well, he has limbered up quite a bit in his dressing room. So when he ascends the ring, he's always ready to fight. That is the trademark of his fighting style. He always comes ready to eat up his opponent with no further amenities, no formalities. In fact, the less formalities for him, the better. that next round of fanfare was meant to usher in the IBF champion. In stark contrast to Mike Tyson's very bare appearance, he comes in with a glittering robe. And there he is giving us a sample of his footwork, which he will undoubtedly need to keep the coming of night, or to stave off the coming of night. He is a 12-1 underdog in this fight, making him probably the greatest underdog in a heavyweight championship fight in boxing history. When Michael Spinks, or rather Leon Spinks, ascended the ring against Muhammad Ali, he was an 8-1 underdog. Back in 1936 or 37, I can't remember exactly what year, Jim Broderick was a 10-1 underdog in his meeting with Max Baer. In both cases, both fighters stunned the boxing world by scoring upsets. You only caught a very fleeting glimpse there of the tail of the tape. Well, the more salient ones included in those figures are age. Well, Mike Tyson is considerably younger. He's only 21 years old. Tony Tucker is already pushing 29. He's still 28. The most significant figures in those stats have to do with height and reach. Mike Tyson is listed as 5 feet 11 and a half, but as I keep saying, I don't believe he's a shade over 5 feet 11. While, on the other hand, Tony Tucker is confirmed to be 6 feet 5 inches. That gives him a 6-inch advantage in height. And the reach department also gives an enormous edge to Tony Tucker, whose wingspan measures all of 81 and a half inches compared to the very short 71-inch wingspan of Iron Mike Tyson. We've already looked at their ring records in the primary last night. Let me just give you some important points to remember. Both fighters are undefeated. Tony Tucker. Hey, here is Chuck Hall.
To the Hilton Center of the Las Vegas Hilton Hotel, where tonight Gun King Productions, in association with the Hilton Hotel, presents Glory Hallelujah, a unification of the heavyweight championship of the world. These bouts are sanctioned by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, Dwayne Ford, Chairman, Harold Buck, Executive Director, with commissioners at ringside, Sid Rogich, Herb Santos, Freddie Little, and Sammy Macias. The sanctioning bodies and the representatives of those bodies at ringside, representing the WBC, its president, Jose Suleiman. Representing the WBA, its president, Gilberto Mendoza. And representing the IBF, its president, Bobby Lee. The officials assigned by the Nevada State Athletic Commission for the next bout of the evening. The judges are Julio Roldan of Venezuela, Phil Newman of New Jersey, and Bill Graham of Las Vegas. The timekeeper is Al Bisick. Counting at the night downs, Mike Lachella. The attending physicians at ringside, Doctors Flip Omansky, Donald Romeo, and Elias Ghanem. And your referee is Mills Lane. This is the main event of the evening. 12 rounds of boxing for the unification of the heavyweight championship of the world. Introducing, in the blue corner, fighting out of Houston, Texas, weighing 221 pounds, with a professional record of 34 wins, no defeats, 29 KOs. He is the IBF heavyweight champion of the world, Tony TNT Tucker. And in the red corner, from Catskills, New York, he too weighs 221 pounds. He is undefeated in his professional career, 30 wins, no defeats, with 27 KOs. He is the WBA and WBC heavyweight champion of the world, Iron Mike Tyson.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the proper introductions have been made atop the ring by Chuck Hall, and Mills Lane is now giving pre-fight instructions to both fighters. There again is the tail of the tape. Look at the weight department. Both fighters weighed in at exactly the same 221 pounds. And we will return to the action right after this.
Presents Juan Alvaro.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is it, the moment of truth. within the next 12 rounds or less, we shall have the first undisputed heavyweight champion of the world since Leon Spinks back in 1978. We're scheduled for 12 rounds. That's right, there has been a revision, a last-minute revision, when both the IBF and the WBA deferred to the WBC in trimming down the distance to just 12 rounds. And we have a very, very bristling first round. This is no acquaintance party. Normally, you would expect them to be just feeling each other out, but it looks like Mike Tyson, in typical fashion, is out for blood right at the outset. Well, he has limbered sufficiently in his locker room, but Tony Tucker seems to be very composed, and at this opening stages of the bout, he seems determined to make full use of his 6-inch advantage in height, as well as his very imposing 10-inch advantage in reach. He also has a terrific hand speed. Of course, Mike Tyson is not exactly a slowpoke either, and so we expect a very, very interesting fight cut along the very classic lines, the classic matchup between a dyed-in-the-wool slugger and a confirmed counterpuncher, a very slick counterpuncher who has tremendous footwork, but who has the capacity, just like Muhammad Ali, to be throwing leather on the fly or on the retreat. Now, this fight is figured to last no more than 3 rounds. We see if that will happen. And Tony Tucker, the taller fighter in the crimson trunks with the white trim, that was exactly the same pair of pants he wore in his fight against James Douglas. He probably decided to wear it again for good luck. Mills Lane is the third man in the ring. Well, if you're asking why Sonny Padilla is not officiating this contest, it's because Sonny Padilla is in Manila right now. As a matter of fact, those of you who caught our primer last night probably saw him lending some very interesting insights into this fight, as well as the profession of officiating in particular. All right, the tremendous reach advantage of Tony Tucker is serving him in good stead. Right now, he's playing it like Bone Crusher Smith. Remember Bone Crusher Smith, who simply elected to hug and embrace Mike Tyson through all of 15 rounds. Well, this bout is scheduled for 12 rounds, and Tony Tucker will probably have to make full use not only of his terrific hand speed, his embracing ability, but also his dazzling footwork to keep away from the dynamite packed in both mitts of Iron Mike Tyson. Only 21 years old, at 20 already the youngest heavyweight champion in all of boxing history. Tony Tucker is pushing 29. That doesn't make him a spring chicken, but he has had only a total of 35 fights before climbing up the ring for this, his 36th professional bout. Both fighters, as I mentioned earlier, are undefeated, and they have tremendously impressive knockout records. Mike Tyson knocking out 27 of his 30 previous opponents. Tony Tucker doing away with 30 of his 35 previous opponents via the short route. There's a solitary right hand thrown from a distance by Tony Tucker. Hey, this guy looks like he's not really all that intimidated by the hitting power of Mike Tyson. Well, Mike Tyson, as everybody knows, figured in the headlines only recently. That's it for round 1. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Las Vegas Hilton and the final showdown. Right now, you're watching some slow-mo highlights of the first round, which bristled with a lot of action, contrary to the expectations of a lot of people. Well, Tony Tucker is not really avoiding Mike Tyson that much. Now, here you're getting a different angle from an overhead camera showing a right connected by Mike Tyson, which was probably the singular highlight of that opening round. We're scheduled for 12. And round 2 is now off the ground at the Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas, Nevada. At stake here is the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. The winner will be recognized by all the world governing bodies of boxing, namely the WBA, the WBC, and the IBF. Iron Mike Tyson giving away 6 inches in height, but absolutely nothing in weight. Both fighters tip the scales at exactly 100 or 221 pounds. There's a left hook by Mike Tyson, and here's Tony Tucker using that pole-like left hand, that elongated left hand of his to fend off the Iron Man from Catskills, New York. Referee is Mills Lane. He's having a hard time today. He's got his work cut out for him because it looks like Tony Tucker is going to do a lot of embracing. But he is not really fighting in the same drab fashion that Bone Crusher Smith dealt with Mike Tyson in their own meeting a few months ago. At least this young man from Grand Rapids, Michigan, is throwing leather. Right now, he just connected with a left jab, but as everybody knows, a left jab is not enough to stop the onslaught of this raging bull. That's right, a heavyweight raging bull in the person of Mike Tyson. Well, Sonny Padilla intimated to us during last night's primer that at close range, Mike Tyson probably packs the most awesome punch he has ever seen in his refereeing career. Para daw nabubundol ng truck pagka tumama sa sikmura ito si Mike Tyson, and he just connected with a left to the rib cage that time. But look at Tony Tucker. His countenance has not changed one bit. He doesn't seem hurt at all. And there he is, using his terrific hand speed once again. That terrific hand speed is serving him in good stead. He landed 2 left jabs, followed up by a right. But there's no question in anybody's mind that the bigger wallop here lies in the midst of Mike Tyson. Well, like I said at the start of this coverage, no fighter has probably captured the imagination of boxing fans since the days of Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano, and Muhammad Ali than this young man who came up from the ghettos of Bedford Stuyvesant in New York to become kingpin of the WBA and the WBC. His opponent today, however obscure he may be, is also not a pushover of a customer, registering 30 knockouts in 35 bouts. One guy, however, held him to a no contest, and that was a gentleman named Danny Sutton back in 1982, to be precise, on August 13th. I don't know exactly the circumstances as to why that fight was declared a no contest. Nevertheless, his record is unblemished. A left hook by Mike Tyson, one of his most lethal weapons. Well, that left hook caught Tucker flush on the chin. Well, I wouldn't really say that was a 10-point bullseye because Tucker sort of rolled with a punch, and he'll need a lot of that in the ensuing rounds. We'll be right back. I guess a lot of money must have changed hands by now because a lot of people figured that Tony Tucker would not survive round 2 of this bout. Actually, the betting in Las Vegas before this fight was not so much as to who would win this fight, but how far it will go. They don't figure that Tony Tucker would even last 12 rounds with Mike Tyson. As it stands now, he has survived 2 rounds, and we're into round 3 of 12. This fight coming to you via satellite straight from the Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas, Nevada. The principals, once again, in case you've just joined us, Tony Tucker, that's him with a very imposing height advantage. There's a warning issued by referee Mills Lane on Mike Tyson, and he comes back into the fray. Tony Tucker displaying a lot of aplomb, a lot of composure as he fends off the continuing advances of Tyson. Tyson is getting to look rather desperate now as Tucker ties him up. That is going to be one of the favorite weapons of Tony Tucker if he wants this fight to go the distance of 12 rounds. Oh, right now he's exchanging some heavy bombs with Tyson. Getting some mileage out of it too. Wow, look at that combination. Tony Tucker, oh, he is living up to his promise to be throwing leather on the fly. That is on the retreat. In typical Muhammad Ali fashion, who happens to be his idol. More left jabs followed by a right. More points being piled up here by Tony Tucker, although, of course, the clear aggressor in this contest is Mike Tyson. How far the fight will go, well, we will find out very soon. Again, a clinch by Tony Tucker. And while they're at it, we'd like to grab this opportunity to greet some very illustrious people who are watching this fight right now from the comfort of their living rooms. Mr. Andy Angulo and Rick Ramos of the BIR, attorney Angie and Meli Barrios, likewise Mr. Kaloy Fausto and Dante of Gatsby. And Mr. Robert Ditiando V also wants to greet the management and staff of Ligaya Farms Incorporated. Well, I'm sure there are a lot more illustrious personages watching this satellite coverage from the comfort of their living rooms. After all, it is a Sunday. And Mills Lane is going to have an aching chest before this fight is over. Well, Sonny Padilla told us how difficult it is to referee a contest between heavyweights because they are so strenuous on the muscles whenever you have to part them. And once again, they wind up in a clinch. That seems to be the fight plan for Tony Tucker. Stick and dance, or if he cannot dance, then he'll just tie up Tyson. Tyson, however, continues to improve with each passing bout, and now they find themselves in a very awkward wrestling hold. The Las Vegas Ballroom, which has been converted into a boxing venue today, seems to be jam-packed with a lot of paying customers. Once again, Tyson backing off Tucker to the neutral corner as the bell sounds the end of round 3. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, while you're watching slow-mo highlights of round 3, we'd like to mention once again our apologies to all those who are disappointed by the fact that they are not getting any actual ringside commentary from an American commentator. The fact of the matter is this satellite feed is really coming in and the reason for this is because the satellite feed we are getting is actually the same thing that is being fed to Korea and Japan. Now, in those countries, they don't want any English commentary to go with the satellite feed because they elect or they prefer to have their own commentators do the actual narration, whether from the studio or from ringside. So, I'd like to repeat that there is really no commentary accompanying this satellite feed, and I do regret that you will have to settle for my own commentaries of this fight, and I'm doing my best to figure out what is really going on from the studio monitor which has been provided to me by the PTV4 engineering staff. All right, this is round 4, and it looks like Tony Tucker intends to stay in a vertical position for all of the 12 rounds scheduled for this contest. That's the Crusher Smith, who simply walks and embraced his way through 15 rounds. Tony Tucker is throwing leather, although he is fighting a very, very methodical and very calculated battle. He's not taking any unnecessary risks, but he also wants to pile up points. And here he is tying up Mike Tyson again, who seems to be growing more frustrated by the moment. All right, Mills Lane asking those two fighters to watch those punches. Well, those are the only sounds you can really get from the satellite feed. The ambiance sound, including that of the ring announcer as well as the referee. In other words, those sounds that can be picked up by the microphones strategically positioned all around the venue by the Don King production people. But absolutely no ringside commentary. 2 left jabs by Mike Tyson. And once again, Tucker goes on a hasty retreat. Mills Lane, he is going to be sweating blood before this fight is over, because you probably will see a lot of those clinching sequences as the fight progresses. Already we are in round 4, and I'm sure a lot of money has already changed hands. A lot of people figured this fight would not go more than 2 or 3 rounds. But believe me, Tony Tucker is still very much on his feet, and he doesn't look at all hurt. Not up to this juncture anyhow, as he continues to display a Muhammad Ali shuffle, the fancy footwork of the great Cassius Clay, as well as hand speed. Well, Tony Tucker, he just took a left hook to the face from Tyson, followed by still another one, but the guy can take a punch. The guy from Grand Rapids, Michigan can take a punch after all.
Well, hit me now. Come on, boy. Here we go.
Again, referee Mills Lane stepping into the picture. Well, one thing, or one common denominator that these two fighters have is the fact that both of them missed making the Olympics in their own eras. Tony Tucker, as I already mentioned earlier, failed to make it to the 1980 Moscow Olympics simply because the United States boycotted the Olympia there. On his part, Mike Tyson failed to make the 1984 Olympics team, and we will tell you more about that right after this. Threshold of round 5 as you watch slow-mo highlights of round 4, where Mike Tyson connected with a long looping left to the face of Tucker. There's the bell signaling round 5, and by gum, Tony Tucker, incredible as it may sound, is still in a vertical position and is more than holding his own. Now there are 3 judges scoring this contest. I'm keeping an unofficial scorecard myself, and I have him at a draw so far with Mike Tyson, although clearly the adversary of this contest is Mike Tyson. Remember round 1 where Tucker connected with what was probably the most solid blow of the fight so far, and that was a left uppercut. And Tyson seemed to have been hurt by it, although of course he stripped the cobwebs off his head in a jiffy and is right back to his bulldozer ways. But Tucker is still playing a very, very cerebral game here, sticking to a very carefully contrived 3-5 line. He just ran slack into another left hook by Tyson. But it looks at this point like Tony Tucker cannot be put away by a single punch. The guy is a lot tougher than a lot of people gave him credit for. He is also a very smart fighter, utilizing every asset he's got in his boxing arsenal, like the propensity for throwing very quick, lightning-like combinations. A left jab followed by a right cross. And look at his countenance. The expression on his face tells you that he is not at all intimidated by the young man from Catskill. This fight is being staged at the Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm Joe Cantana, and we're doing this coverage from PTV4 studios here along Bohol Avenue in Quezon City. And here I'd like to apologize that we don't have any American commentator because there is nothing but international sound on the satellite feed that came to us, meaning only ambient sound, no commentary whatsoever, so you'll just have to settle for our narration. Referee is Neil Slager. The three judges, incidentally, are two Americans, Bill Graham and Phil Newman, and a Venezuelan by the name of Julio Roldan. Tucker with 6'5" is just as tall as Ramon Fernandez, but he's about 60 pounds heavier. And you can see the disparity in height, and you think that Mike Tyson is exactly the same height as Rudy Streeter. Another big PBA doubleheader later today.
Stand back, Mike. Come on, here we go.
One of the nicest blueprints ever worked up for a fight is being displayed right now by Tony Tucker. He knows when to clinch, he knows when to throw leather, he knows when to backpedal, he knows when to back off. Right now he's using his footwork. That's a lot more footwork you're seeing him display in contrast to his assignment against James Douglas that finally featured as an aperitif for this satellite telecast of the final show. Here comes Michael Tyson. Another booming barrage, but it didn't seem to rock Tucker one bit, and he will live to see round 6. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're on the threshold of round 6. You just heard the bell signal. Hey! It looks like Mike Tyson is in such a great hurry to get things going. Even before Tucker could get up from his stool and put on his mouthpiece, he was already on top of him. I guess this is simply a reflection of the frustration of Mike Tyson at being unable to put away a very tough and rugged opponent whom everybody figured would fall in just 2 or 3 rounds. As it stands now, we're close to the halfway point of the scheduled 12-rounder, and Tony Tucker is definitely still in the contest. He's still throwing a lot of leather. He hasn't really been significantly hurt so far, although he has absorbed some of the best bombs that Tyson could explode in his direction. And there's a very nifty left jab thrown by Tyson. The Iron Man from Catskills, New York, is keeping the pressure on. But Tony Tucker just refuses to knuckle under. He's maintaining his poise, he's maintaining his aplomb, he's maintaining his cool, and sticking very close to his pre-fight plan. A great combination led up by a right, followed by a left, and another right by Tony Tucker. And the guy is holding Mike Tyson on more or less even terms, although I would imagine the judges are seeing this more or less in favor of Mike Tyson so far. Well, there is always a psychological edge of being the sensation of the boxing world. Here comes another foray by Mike Tyson.
All right, get off that net. Come on, one step back, clean both. That's a clean break. Here we go.
Signs of desperation and annoyance with himself for his inability to break through the impregnable wall put up there between him and Tucker by the TNT. There's another left jab exploded in the face by Tucker. And by now, I'm sure, Tony Tucker, the unheralded young man from Grand Rapids, Michigan, is gaining the admiration of the outsiders at the Las Vegas Hilton. A lot of them, you probably will notice, are staring in disbelief that the fight has gone this far. The Muhammad Ali footwork. You know what this fight is shaping up to be is some kind of a replica of the Muhammad Ali Joe Frazier fight. One of which was a quote from Pearl Fighter back in 1975, where he struggled with Kula in Manila. And there are really a lot of similarities. The fighting style of Tony Tucker, for one, seems to be replicated after Muhammad Ali. There's the Ali shuffle. On his part, Mike Tyson is playing the role of Joe Frazier. He stands exactly the same as Joe Frazier at 5 feet 11, although he weighs considerably more than Joe Frazier and is more muscularly stacked. Another round that Tony Tucker has survived. We shall return with round 7. Back to Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas, Nevada. A tremendous right cross was just absorbed there by Tony Tucker, but nothing, it seems, in the arsenal of Mike Tyson can put away this very tenacious young man from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Look at him simply shaking his head and telling everybody that he was not hurt. Of course, I wouldn't be too sure about that. I'm sure he saw some scars there, but he had enough presence of mind. He had enough guts to shake it off, and he will be answering the bell for round 7. That's right, 6 rounds down, 6 more rounds to go in this 12-round affair. At stake here is the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. That's right. Before this fight is over, we shall have a new universally recognized heavyweight champion of the world. Not since Leon Spinks, upset Muhammad Ali. Mills Lane once again stopping the fight momentarily to issue another warning to Mike Tyson. Apparently, he spotted some dirty tricks being employed here by the bulldozer from Catskills, New York. Well, like I told you, he grew up in the ghettos of Bedford Stuyvesant, where he was picked up by the late Cos D'Amato, the same guy who maneuvered and steered the brilliant career of Floyd Patterson. That's why you probably noticed some glaring resemblances in the fighting styles of Floyd Patterson and Mike Tyson. Of course, Floyd Patterson had nothing close to the hitting power of Mike Tyson, but you can see some traces of the peekaboo stunts which Cos D'Amato teaches every fighter that has ever come into his fold. And here is Tony Tucker neutralizing that perpetual punching machine by constantly holding on to him, dancing away, but then he's also throwing leather, which makes him very close to Mike Tyson in my unofficial scorecard. I have no idea right now as to how the judges are seeing it. More left jabs by Tucker. You know, that peekaboo stance of Mike Tyson is something that is very hard to penetrate. That's why, notwithstanding his very short stature, he is very difficult to hit. Break it up, fellas, as Mills Lane. Another combination unloaded by way of counter punching by Tony Tucker.
Now, if you go down there one more time, it's going to cost you a point. Okay,
you heard that very clearly from Mills Lane. If you hit him one more time below the belt, it's going to cost Tucker 1 point.
Step back. I'm going to step back. Step back, Tony. Grab it. Step back. Here we go.
That's as stern a warning as you can get from the referee, and I know he means it. I'm surprised, though, that Tony Tucker is coming up with some low blows. Normally, you would expect that from the shorter fighter, mainly because the belt line of his opponent is much closer to his firing range. Oh, look at this. Tony Tucker is even grandstanding a la Sugar Ray Leonard. I think he's a little red in the face after he took that left jab from Tyson. And here comes Tyson applying the pressure again. And now Tucker is really hot dogging, even inviting Tyson to come in. That may be very costly. I wouldn't be too confident if I were in his shoes, but then we'll wait and see what happens in the next round. Well, incredible as it may sound, we're now on the brink of round 8. A 12-1 underdog. Tony Tucker is still in a vertical position, ready to answer the bell for round 8. We're scheduled for 12. Remember that only 3 men have gone the distance before with Iron Mike Tyson. These were James Quick Tillis, Mitch Blood Green, and most recently Bone Crusher Smith. It looks like Tony Tucker stands a pretty good chance of being the 4th man with that distinction. And he started hostilities in this 8th round with a very short, snappy left jab. That has been, so far, the biggest thorn in the neck of Mike Tyson. That very pesky left jab being thrown in his direction constantly and with a lot of authority by Tony Tucker, the IBF champion.
All right, get off that neck, Tony. Come on, you're grabbing too much.
Again by Tony Tucker.
Come on, come on.
That is, of course, part of the survival kit. And I'm sure my good friend and ringside buddy Ermi Rivera is enjoying this fight very much, although I don't know who he's got his money on. Whatever he's got his money on, I'm sure he's going to lose.
Watch out!
More action at mid-ring and more work here for Mills Lane, the 3rd man in the ring. He's certainly earning his keep tonight. Tonight, in reference to the time of day in Las Vegas, Nevada. Actually, it's past noontime here in Manila. That reminds me we all need lunch, so may I just drop an invitation for you to come to Savory Restaurant for tender, tasty, and juicy fried chicken with branches at Timog, Corner, Panay Avenue, Cubao, and Luneta. Soon to open, the Savory Hilton. Thank you, Mr. Lacson Ting.
Oh, one step back, clean. One step back, clean. Come on. Step back. Here we go.
Going back to the referee, with all due respect to the officiating abilities of referee Mills, he doesn't seem to exude the kind of authority that Sonny Padilla does whenever he officiates a contest. Yes, even among heavyweights. Sonny always yells out his instructions, and the mere sound of his voice is enough to make the principals or the protagonists obey his command. Tyson, as always, keeping his fists very close to his face in a defensive tight, as well as a boxing idiosyncrasy.
One step back. On the punch, you one step back. Then let him go, Mike. Here we go. One step back. Here we go.
Tony Tucker, in the meantime, is showing no signs of holding up. No knockout is in sight. Okay, Mills Lane stopping the fight momentarily. Oh, he spotted a loose tape on the left glove of Mike Tyson. And that's Kevin Rooney, the trainer and cornerman of Mike Tyson, who's fixing his tape. They'll have to cut it off. Yes. And simply tape the slot. And the cornerman of Tony Tucker grabbed the opportunity to apply an ice pack on the back of his rather tired fighter. Tired, but still willing to fight. And that's the hallmark of a great fighter. Well, regardless of the outcome of this fight, whether he does go on to get knocked out or lose by a point position, everybody's admiration is already reserved for Tony Tucker for his gallant stand through all of these 8 rounds, which only has 23 seconds remaining. We'll have 4 more chapters after this. Only a few times before has Mike Tyson gone past the 8th round in his previous outings. Oh, he just got himself a right to the face.
Oh, one step back. Come on,
well,
let him go, Tony. Let him go,
Tony
Mike.
Tucker doesn't make a trick in the book. That's for sure. And we'll have round 9. All right, back to the final showdown in the Las Vegas Hilton. You just heard the bell sending round 9 off the ground. And Tony Tucker still is in a vertical position. At stake here, the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. Looks like Tony Tucker is hot after repeating history made by Leon Spinks when he upset Muhammad Ali back in 1978 with a unanimous points victory over the great champion. Well, of course, everybody knows that Muhammad Ali eventually came back later on to beat him in a rematch. Well, Tony Tucker has already gained the respect of boxing fans all over the world who are watching this via satellite with his gutsy stand against Mike Tyson. Now, to be sure, on my unofficial scorecard, I have him lagging behind by about 3 rounds, but that certainly is not a very decisive advantage for Mike Tyson, who was figured to put him away by a knockout in less than 3 rounds. But the bulldozer from Catskills, New York is keeping the pressure on. Aplomb, presence of mind, tremendous composure, and an unfazed attitude towards his opponent seem to be the hallmark of Tony Tucker's fighting style. He just got another left to the face. Oh, he has a terrific jaw. He has absorbed quite a number of licks in that particular section of the anatomy, and he has taken it all without even showing signs that he was really seeing any stars at all. And right now it looks like Mike Tyson might be losing the sting in his punches. Very seldom in his checkered career has he gone this far with an opponent. Like I mentioned, only 3 fighters have gone more than 10 rounds with this gentleman before, and these were James Quick Tillis, Mitch Blood Green, and Bone Crusher Smith. But this fight with Tony Tucker is particularly enervating to Mike Tyson because of the grappling holds constantly being applied on him by Mike Tucker. Well, the TNT, which of course means trinitropolyrene, which is the scientific name for dynamite, has not really exploded that much dynamite of his own, but the mere fact that he has been able to weather all the storms being kicked up here by Tyson is by itself a phenomenal feat. Something that will make him a figure to reckon with in the heavyweight division for a long time to come. And he just might wind up the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world if he can come up with a knockout. But then, of course, hey, let me see. Mills Lane has again warned Tony Tucker, I didn't exactly hear what he was saying, but he must have warned him for more low blows. Well, probably not low blows, because he said that earlier, if Tucker were to come up with more low blows, he would already slot him with a 1-point deduction. Well, he didn't, so it must have been a different infraction. Okay, in this case, Mike Tyson is being warned for headbutting. That's right. The Iron Man is now Billy Gooding, and it looks like Tucker is going to be around for round 10.
And still
No faint smell of a knockout is around the corner for Mike Tyson. Now, you're wondering how this fight has come this far. Perhaps I may offer what may seem to be a simplistic explanation, but it may hold water. The mere fact is that Tony Tucker has avoided the pitfalls that plagued the attempts of Trevor Berbick and Pinkman Thomas behind him, and that is electing to slug it out with the destroyer from Catskills, New York. Tony Tucker has played a very heady battle, but he has also not gone to the very shameful resort of Bone Crusher Smith, and that is simply making survival his main target. Tony Tucker seems here determined not only to survive, but also to win the fight. Although, to be sure, he must be about 3 rounds behind in the judges' scorecards right now. Mike Tyson, ever onward, that's his motto. He seldom takes a backward step. Okay, another momentary halt to the fight. And this time, Mills Lane is adjusting the trunks of Mike Tyson, which is falling to very dangerous levels. While the garter on those pants are coming a little loose. And that's understandably so, because the young man has never, or well, has seldom fought a battle this far. Another warning issued by Mills Lane on Mike Tyson. Tony Tucker looks a little tuckered out at this point, but make no mistake about it, he's still got the presence of mind and the composure and the aplomb of a real champion, which he is, as far as the International Boxing Federation is concerned. Well, when this fight is over, we shall have only one universally recognized champion. More stinging left jabs by Mike Tyson, which Tucker is simply shrugging off, shaking off. I'm sure he was hurt by those left jabs, but at least he is macho enough to try to pretend that he is not being hurt, and he's coming back strongly with lefts of his own. We're pushing towards the middle of round 10, which will leave us 2 more rounds. And it looks like Tony Tucker will go on to survive the distance, which is, like I said earlier, already a phenomenal feat by itself. Tyson walking smack into a short left jab by Tucker. The TNT still has not exploded. Looks like there won't be an explosion from his end. The likelihood of a knockout coming from his direction is very remote. But Mike Tyson himself doesn't seem that much capable now of pulling off a rousing knockout. And even if he goes to win this fight by decision, I think his record will be considerably blemished. But credit that to the gutsy stand of Tony Tucker. Remember that name. You probably never heard that name before. Well, that name will stick in your minds from here on in. He will be a figure to reckon with in the heavyweight division for some time to come. And that's quite something for a guy whose most illustrious opponent in the past had been James Broad. We'll be back with round 11. Brace yourselves now. We're moving to the last 2 rounds of this championship contest, the Twilight Zone, an area which Muhammad Ali had very aptly described in the past as championship territory. That's right. This is where you separate the true champions from the run-of-the-mill champions. Well, we have a couple of champions who are living up to their reputations as champions. Iron Mike Tyson still has not been able to uncork his vaunted devastating left hook that could floor a cow. On his part, Tony Tucker has gallantly held his ground, 41 even terms, and we're having another one of those many interruptions in this contest. Looks like it's Tony Tucker's turn now to find a loose tape on his glove. Well, it didn't take his corner man long to simply shear it off with his scissors, and they're back into the fray. Why do we call this championship territory? Well, anything over 10 rounds is championship territory, because 10 rounds in a boxing contest is equivalent to running a marathon. Anything after that is already superhuman proportions. And did you see that windmill move? And look at him grandstanding again, and a smile breaking out in his face. This guy is still confident. He must think he's ahead on points. Well, we beg to disagree with that. We have Mike Tyson ahead by a few rounds, but it's something that can still be overturned if Tony Tucker can come up with a big finishing kick here in these last 2 rounds. I don't think it's really time for him to grandstand. Oh, he got in a good right uppercut, but he got a left to the face in return. But if there is something that Tony Tucker is proving right now, it is that Mike Tyson is not that invulnerable. And his punches are not really that destructive. People have figured that humans cannot stand up to the kind of beating that this guy from Catskills can dish out. But Tony Tucker has disproved that already. So whether or not Tyson can steal a knockout between now and the final bell, it's already a proven fact that somebody like Tony Tucker, who has his brains, who has his presence of mind, who has his composure, and who has his championship pride, can stand up to somebody like Mike Tyson. All you need really is a very smart battle plan, which Tony Tucker certainly came armed with even before the fight started. And at this point, it looks like Mike Tyson is also running low on fuel. I seriously doubt if he can still pull off a knockout at this rather late stage. He has not been known to pull off very many knockouts beyond 7 rounds. And when you're up against a very tough hombre like Tony Tucker, the likelihood becomes more remote. But the fight has followed pretty much the same pattern it started out with. Mike Tyson applying the pressure and all the footwork and all the brains on the side of Tony Tucker. We'll have the final round very shortly. Chewy Chemical Corporation and Mr. Fernando are among those who are incredulous as to about the fact that this fight has gone this far. And probably the most surprised party here is none other than Mike Tyson himself, whose record of being a destroyer of champions is right on the block and is severely under siege in the face of a tremendous challenge posed in his direction by a gutsy fighter from Grand Rapids, Michigan. That tall guy, all 6'5" of him, but he might as well stand 10 feet tall right now as far as the ringsiders at the Las Vegas Hilton are concerned. Tony TNT Tucker. We haven't seen any TNT explosions, but the mere fact that he has survived this far and has also dished out a lot of licks in the direction of Mike Tyson is by itself something for the boxing books. Well, credit also a good job to the officiating of Mills Lane. But at this point, I highly doubt if he will have an opportunity to count anybody out. At this point, just looking at the glistening body of Mike Tyson and the expression on his face tells you that he probably no longer has the capacity to put away Tony Tucker. He's fighting on more or less unfamiliar terrain because this is one of the very, very few times he has gone in a fight to a 12th round.
Step back, let him go, Tony, let him go. Step back, come on, here we go, let him go.
Stand back, Sands Mills Lane. That's the umpteenth time he has had to part the red fighters. And look at this. Another hot dogging bid by Tony Tucker. Well, he picked that one up unquestionably from Sugar Ray Leonard. He probably hopes to psych the judges into giving him the decision. I seriously doubt that, though, because I have Mike Tyson ahead by a few rounds. But then, of course, it's not really that decisive a margin. This fight could still be called in favor of Tony Tucker, depending on the viewpoint of the judges. See, now it all boils down to a matter of subjective assessment. The only way Mike Tyson can escape the subjective assessment of the judges is to come up with a knockout punch, and he is doing his darndest best to get it right now. But Tony Tucker continues to shake his head and say, no, you didn't hurt me. Of course you got hurt. But then when you have the presence of mind to pretend that you're not hurt, then that means you're not hurt. I don't know if I'm making sense. But this fight has not made sense at all to a lot of people at ringside who figured that he couldn't go past 3 rounds. And look at the ringsiders all up on their feet. They're egging on Tony Tucker. That's right. It's Tony Tucker they're cheering for now, and rightly so. The young man from Michigan has put up a game stand, and the fight is over. The fight is over, and we shall return with a decision in a very short while.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the decision of the judges. We have a unanimous decision. Judge Phil Newman scores 119-111. Judge Julio Roldan scores 118-113. And Judge Bill Graham scores 116-112 for the winner by unanimous decision and undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, Iron Mike Tyson.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't exactly disagree with that decision, but I don't exactly agree that it was a humiliating defeat for Tony Tucker. I might even go so far as to say that it was a resounding victory in defeat for this young man who used to hold the IBF version of the heavyweight title. Nevertheless, it was a clear-cut victory, although a close one for Mike Tyson, who is now the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Now, I do remember having read somewhere before the fight, they quoted Tony Tucker as saying that if I lose this fight against Tyson, that is going to be the end of my career. For Tyson, if he loses, he can always come back. I beg to disagree with Mr. Tucker. He has found himself a great heap of respect from everybody, and I am sure that a lot of people will join me in saying that this guy even deserves a rematch, because the victory by Tyson certainly was not very convincing. In fact, I would like to read to you the scorecards of the judges in case you did not get to hear all the figures. Bill Graham of the United States, one of two American judges, scored it 116-112. I go along with that. That was only a 4-point disparity. Phil Newman, undoubtedly, is a Tyson fan. He saw it 119-111. He probably deserves a visit to his optometrist. I think he needs a new pair of eyeglasses. Julio Roldan of Venezuela scored it 118-113. Well, that's closer to the fact. But Bill Graham really saw it the way it was, the way a lot of us saw it, 116-112. A very close, nevertheless, a unanimous decision for Iron Mike Tyson. Now, Iron Mike Tyson, I am sure, is going to run into a lot of flack as a result of what people figure is a rather disappointing performance. You see, the trouble with being built up like Mike Tyson is that people just don't expect you to win. They expect you to kill your opponents. And if you don't kill your opponents, then you're nothing. But that is the burden of supremacy, which is inherent in everybody who occupies the heavyweight crown. And that's something that Mike Tyson will have to live with. On the part of Tony Tucker, I don't think it's all over for him. I think he might even do better in a rematch. In the meantime, looking forward, I don't think that rematch will happen very soon, because already the managers of Mike Tyson are planning some kind of a showdown with the fast-rising Tyrell Biggs. Remember him? He was the Olympic heavyweight champion back in the 1984 Los Angeles Olympiad. Well, he is the fastest rising star in the heavyweight division, and he probably is next in line for Mike Tyson. And then after that, they could probably work up, if they can just get together with all the disparate factions in the boxing community, they can probably come up with the dream match of the century, and that is Mike Tyson versus Michael Spinks. That, too, looms very, very realistically in the horizon. Well, I would like to apologize once again to those who were disappointed by the fact that I did the commentary for the fight, but it could not be helped, I assure you. It was not intended on our part. As a matter of fact, I did not know about that particular chore that I was going to do until I got here to the studio a few minutes before airtime. I was told that when the satellite feed came in, it bore absolutely no trace of commentary from any commentator, American or otherwise. So we were forced to pick up the cudgels, and I hope you will pardon our shortcomings. It is a job we have to do. Otherwise, you probably would have had to watch the fight without any commentary whatsoever. Who knows, maybe you might have found it better that way. In any case, it was a job I had to do. And you're trying to tell me something, Mr. Barameda? Incidentally, Mr. Balameda worked out the beautiful format and script for that primer we aired last night. Congratulations, Mr. Balameda. Likewise to Mr. Robert Ditiandu, who in cooperation with Mr. Berlunaria put together their resources to come up with this satellite coverage. It cost them a lot of money, but I'm sure you found it well worth all the time and effort they put into it. So, if you missed any part of the action today, you can still catch it tonight here on PTV4 right after the PBA games. And talking of the PBA, they have another big doubleheader as lined up for you by way of a weekend offering. I believe it's going to be Magnolia versus Hills Brothers. No, Magnolia versus Shell and Great Taste versus Hills Brothers. That's right. More or less in that order. So, it's been great sharing the beautiful Sunday morning with you. I'd like to thank you for sharing a good part of your weekend with us, and we hope you will continue to follow all the